Sorry about that.
That's okay. Next is the continuation of our Historical Recollection Series, and Trustee Gieser, will you introduce our guest?
Thank you very much. Yes, this is the 50th anniversary of the Village of Carroll Stream, and in recognition of that, we're taking a few minutes before every board meeting to talk about the history of the village. And joining us today will be the second library director of the Carroll Stream Public Library, Lynn O'Dell. Mrs. O'Dell served as the library director and librarian from 1964 to 2005, 41 years. Lynn O'Dell, please. I just want to mention the library was originally opened on September 29th, 1962, and the first librarian was Judy Ulrich, and the office was at 397 Blackhawk.
My first line in my prepared remarks was that one of the strengths of this community is volunteerism. I had no idea what the agenda was tonight, but that is my first line, and the civic involvement of its residents. I'm saying this is true today as when the village was incorporated, as marked by the Citizen of the Year Awards, which are also scheduled for later on this week. The library's story began with dedicated volunteers and civic groups who believed that having a library would enhance the quality of life in Carroll Stream, not just for kids, but for people of all ages. In October 1961, the Carroll Stream Women's Club requested the services of a bookmobile from the Gail Borden Library in Elgin. By January 1962, Carroll Stream had its first library, albeit it was on wheels. The following April, funding for the bookmobile was dropped because funding was no longer available to support the operation. A group of concerned citizens met to discuss the pros and cons of having a library in Carroll Stream. They were told by the state library that this could never happen, that they could never do it. Well, that's all the village trustees and the concerned citizens needed to hear. They went ahead and took the steps to form a library in Carroll Stream. In May '62, the village board passed an ordinance providing for a public library and reading room to be housed in the village hall, which, as Rick said, was located at 397 Blackhawk. That's Dr. Blackman and Bliss' dental office at this right now. At that time, Judy Ulrich was named the first librarian and hired for $1 a year. And I thought my salary was big. It was an extraordinary time. The entire village very enthusiastically supported the project. In 1 year, some 3,500 volumes of assorted books were donated by residents and other generous people in the area. Stories were told of kids pulling wagon loads of books up to 397 Blackhawk, where volunteers organized the collection, processed the books, and put the materials together. Cash donations were made, current periodicals were pledged, furniture was donated, the J.C.'s came in and moved all the furniture around and painted the shelves. It was truly a volunteer effort to get the library off the ground. Officially opened to the public, as Rick said, on September 29, 1982. To help defray the expenses and to allow for the purchase of one book per family per year, the Village Commission decided that a fee of $2 per resident family would be charged, and $3 for non-resident families. At this point, the library was open all of 7 hours a week. The first Library Commission budget totaled $4,821.77. The librarian was assisted by volunteers who processed, shelved, and checked out books and magazines. Woman Club volunteered to read stories to children. I was one of those volunteers. By December, there were 4,400 books available for circulation, and the hours open per week increased to 14 and a half. At this time, I was hired for $100 a month. We bought a car with that $100 a month. I bought the second car. In spite of working in close quarters, we got along very well together. Now, the the police department, the village offices, and the library all shared this space. People refer to it as the little house on Black Hawk, but it never really was a house. It was the sales office of Durable Construction Company. It was the first kindergarten. It was the dentist's office for a while, which interestingly enough is now a dentist's office again. It served as a community center. I mean, people registered their kids for baseball. And I know my husband played Santa Claus for the fire department kids. It was probably the only meeting room space in the village at that time. And ultimately, of course, shared by village administration, the police department, and the library. Now, in spite of working in very close quarters, we all got along very well, although it could be pretty interesting at times. Librarians need to be discreet, even more so when the police department is in the next room away from you, and only the size of about a large bedroom or 2 small bedrooms. That's as large as the police department was at that time. And of course, you heard everything that went on to everyone and who was charged with what. But of course, we maintained our discretion through that time. There were no holding cells or interview rooms. I assume offenders were sent to the county. But the kids were a different story. Police were really concerned about the kids. Now, like today, kids got into trouble or ran away from home, and the police needed to hold them somewhere. Well, where else to put them but in the library? So I would babysit the kids until their parents came to get them. I'm not sure how many readers we really encouraged with this program, but it was at least the kids were safe. Everyone who worked in the building also shared 2 bathrooms, one of which served as the drunk tank. I assure you, this was not always pleasant when the library staff came to work on Monday morning, and it had been a particularly raucous weekend. Another thing I recall is that the fire department installed one of its sirens on the building roof. I assure you, nothing shatters the quiet of the reading room like the shrill surprise of that siren going off. After 4 years under the auspices of the Library Commission, a referendum was passed in August 1966 to create a village library to be governed by the elected board of directors. In 1968, the board purchased the building, the library board purchased the building, and the village offices and police department moved to the Alexander Construction Building further north on Black Hawk. Although the library remodeled the building and doubled its space, the community was growing very rapidly at that time, and the building soon became too small again. Consideration of a site for a new building began in 1970. The referendum passed in November 1975 by a vote of 2-1, and the existing library building on Hiawatha was occupied in 1978. The challenges encountered, Chris mentioned that I addressed the challenges in the 60s. Well, they're the same ones that exist today. Securing adequate funding and providing sufficient space to meet residents' needs, made even more difficult in these terrible economic times. An ongoing positive, however, has been the fine level of cooperation between the village and the library that goes beyond the structured tie that binds the 2 government entities. I commend you for that, and I urge you to continue this spirit of cooperation with the library and all the other governmental units. I consider it a profound privilege to have served as library director for 41 years. It's an experience I will never forget. I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Well, in honor of you coming here and speaking to us, we have a little token of our esteem.
We used to share coffee with the police department, too. And it's a good thing I like strong coffee. And old coffee.
Well, here's a strong coffee mug.
That's
and
nice.
A button, a pin for honoring the village. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.